Get started here. Okay, this is actually the fourth session in our Christian financial thing called Mastering Your Money. We have looked at gathering information. So we have worksheets in all these if you missed and want to get these. Gathering information. We have, what was the second one? We set goals. Third, we budgeted. That was last time. And if you didn't get the budget worksheets, you want to get those. So I've got those up here. And now we're going to move into how to save, and then next week, how to spend. Spending is more fun usually for most people, but I can't spend it if you don't save it, right?
We're not doing that until after Black Friday.
That's right. Kind of should have probably done that, huh? Yeah. So, but that's, when is that Cyber Monday or whatever that is?
Next week,
The Monday after? But I'll have the thing before that then.
yeah.
Okay, maybe there's still time to save your souls right there. Okay, let's pray. Father, we pray now for our discussion on money. Finances is an important part of our lives, and it's a stewardship that you give us, a trust that you give us. And I pray, Lord, that we are people that learn how to handle your resources well so that we can use them for your glory and for the best use of funds to further your gospel and your purposes and to help people. And so we pray we can get a good handle on this together in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, so we're going to look at how to save. And this is, to some of you, this might be a very eye-opening. I hope it shocks you on occasion or two, as well as helps you. So let's start off with this. Here's the most important financial principle possible, really. Number one, most important. Spend less than you earn and do it for a long time and you'll be financially successful. Okay, very, very simple, but not always easy to do. So spend less than you earn, do it for a long time, you'll be financially successful. So the whole gathering tonight will be wrapped around that principle one way or the other and how we can do that. So as we look at that, we're looking at savings. America is not real good at saving money. Right now, the savings rate in America is supposedly 5%. Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. But the medium saving, what money people have set aside, the medium. So you know the difference between average and medium. So average is if you put everybody together, divided by the number of people, then you have the average savings. That number's higher. For America, I think it's up in the $80,000 category. Average savings for Americans is about $80,000. But that's really skewed because that lumps in people like Warren Buffett and Elon Musk, Donald Trump, all these billionaires. You put all that in there and you add it up and divide it, and you come up with a pretty big number. So a much better number is the medium. So medium is you take all the people in America that are here. And so let's say we have, I don't know how many people are looking at this number because we're not looking at children. So let's say it's 260 million people. And you go right to the middle number, 130 million. And how much is that people right in the middle there saving, okay, in America? So how much do you think the medium savings of Americans is? 1,000? No, not quite that low. 5,000. 5,000, I think it is. Or actually, no, 8,000. Okay, 8,000 is that medium number. But if you go back and look at the statistics, and you run this up on the internet anytime you want to, there are a huge number of people who have zero. Have nothing to fall back on whatsoever, and then there's other people that are doing better. But $8,000 is what we're looking at this week and later. Not going to go very far when you have a need.
When you say savings, what does that entail?
Yeah, this is money put aside in everything. Retirement.
Savings account,
Yeah.
investments.
Yeah.
So you're telling me the average person in America has only, like the median person has only $8,000
Total.
complete savings, retirement, and everything?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you looked at the numbers by age bracket, it'll kind of go up as you get older, as you expect, but it does after about 60 or so, starts going back down. So the average person, most people in retirement do not have hardly any money at all to fall back on. So they're living by paycheck to paycheck. If anything comes up that's out of the ordinary, they can't pay for it. And the only thing they can do is go into debt to cover the bills or just not pay. That's a very tough way to live life, let me tell you. Kim?
And of course, during the tag along, we'll mainly end up paying social
I think it's over 80% of the people in the United States die less than $25,000 to their name. Do you know anything?
I don't know about that exact number, but that wouldn't be far off. Most people simply don't have much of anything. And that's kind of shocking, isn't it? So that's the kind of thing we want to work on today about how to not be in that category. So none of us doubt this, probably the wisdom of this particular saying. The question is, how do we do it? And so we're going to look at several ways today to actually accomplish the ability to save money. Okay, and and we're not looking. A lot of people they just want to get rich, quick ideas. Those hardly ever work for anybody. We're looking at long-term programs where we can save money and be financially in good shape. So what are the principles here? So we're going to go through several today. Number one, and this is again probably the most important of the principles: pay yourself first, and then don't touch your savings once you get it. Yeah. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit later. We talked about that when we did budgeting last week. So budgeting, if you remember there's certain things, certain obligations we have that first of all, giving to the Lord, I think is top of the Christian budget. Then we have our taxes. We can't get around paying our taxes. Those are two things that are pretty much set or should be set. Then we're looking at the money after that and what we can do with that money. Okay? All right, so pay yourself first. Now again, like Dan said, after you have decided what are you going to give to the Lord's work first, but now we're talking about discretionary money. So pay yourself first. If you don't do that, most of us will never save. If you wait until you have extra money and then put it away, you will. Almost nobody's going to ever save. You'll spend it, and so that's why most people are in a mess they're in. If you make it a priority, though, to pay yourself first before you pay anyone else, you can be amazed how fast it grows for you. Everyone, the financial experts say minimum of saving is 10% of your income. And many are saying you should go more for 20% of your income for saving. Now, that's shocking to people who have never saved a dime, to think about saving 20% of your income. But 10% minimum that you ought to be looking at. And as I said a moment ago, the rates in America right now, the median rate is 5%, which is actually higher than sometimes. It's been as low as 2% in recent times. Where you go to Japan and places, they're saving 20, 30% of their income. So unless they travel, because they don't have anything to buy over there, right?
So when you say saving that much, you're talking about putting it into a fund for emergencies?
Well, we'll look at the emergency funds later. We're not looking at categories right now. I'm just talking about everything.
So like you're talking about like versus the money you gotta spend to live on every paycheck.
Mhm.
So like if I'm saving, if I need to spend X amount of dollars for groceries, but then I'm saving $100 because I need to have money for car repairs. Is that part of that? Will that count towards that? Because I'm not spending it. I'm putting it away. No, I'm going to have to spend it.
Yeah. So when you're saving money for a goal, remember a couple weeks ago we talked about goals. So you're saving money towards goals, and there's short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. So let's say you're looking at a vacation, and you want $3,000 to go on vacation. So you're saving X number of dollars every paycheck to go on vacation. That's a savings towards that end. Then you spend it on vacation. Same thing for a car, children's education, whatever you're saving for. So money is not meant to be hoarded. We have a purpose for each of our money. But we are accumulating that money towards a goal that we're having. It's part of that number. Yeah. Yeah, so if I've got, let's say I've got my short-term goals of vacation, purchasing a car in a year and a half, funding my kids' college education in 15 years, all that is part of the savings. Okay, so when you start thinking about that, 20% is probably not a bad rate, especially when you start thinking about education and housing and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, the only other way to do it is to go in debt. And debt is not where we want to be. We'll talk about that another day. But debt is something we want to stay away from as much as we can. Okay, so, all right. Now, the objection immediately arises if you're a person who can't save much, have never been able to save anything, and then somebody comes up and says, well, you need to save at least 10% of your money, then you will say, I can't do that. That's just impossible to do. But I would challenge you, as I think I said a couple of weeks ago, if you were to go to work tomorrow and your employer said, we're having budget problems here, we're cutting your salary 10%. You would gripe and complain and bellyache, say you're leaving America, you're going to go to France, along with all the celebrities. And then after you calm down a little bit, you would say to yourself, I've got to do what I got to do. And if you lost 10% of your income, somehow you would survive. So the question is not whether you can, the question is will you? So most everybody can save 10% if they want to. They just have to do some of the things we're going to talk about tonight to get to that place. Another interesting phenomenon that I've seen anecdotally over the time, and I think it holds up, is to watch people who cannot save a dime, have never been able to save a dime, who buy a car on payment. And now they're putting out whatever car payment is for them, anywhere from $200 to $1,000 or more a month on car payments, where they would declare they cannot save. But somehow, when they want that car, they can come up with the payment. So that just shows priorities more than anything else. It shows what we can do when we want to do it bad enough. So it's trying to save 10%. If we're motivated, most people can do that. Now look at the second part of this. This money is untouchable until your goal is met for these monies. So for example, as I said a while ago, so if I'm saving for a car in 2 years and I'm putting money away, now one of the things we'll talk about when we're talking about spending next time and debt is that we should always be making a car payment. Okay, Dave Ramsey would have a stroke if he heard that. But the car payment that you're making may not be going for a car. It may be going into an account to pay for a car by cash. Okay, so let's say you have a car payment, and you're paying $500 a month for a car payment. And as best I can follow that, you would be buying a used car at that. So I'd say most people are paying at least $1,000 a month on car payments. All right, so if you buy a new car, you're going to be paying that for sure. Okay. And cars are now approaching in the $40,000 average. Many of them are $70,000 or $80,000 for a van or a truck or whatever else. So it gets up there in a hurry. Okay, so I'm saving X number of dollars. I pay off my car. My van, for example, is a 2016. One of the principles you ought to keep in mind as you buy a vehicle is you ought to plan to keep it for 10 years, minimum. If it'll go longer than that, great. But you should be trying to keep a car for as long as it'll run. You don't need to buy a new car all the time. So 10 years. So you pay off the car, and let's say you paid off the car in 5 years. And now, like my car, it's approaching 10 years old. It's 8 years old. So I have 3 years. I'm going to keep making the same payment to myself until I'm ready for another car. And then I've accumulated the money I need to buy a car outright. It ought to be the goal of everybody in the room, and I think especially you younger people, to be able to buy your cars outright and not go into debt for car. Car payment is one of the worst. Ramsey says, I think, the worst possible debt you can get because it's a depreciating item. You buy a car at $50,000. Next week it's worth $40,000. In 4 years it's worth if it says 20,000 according to his numbers. $50,000 car in 4 years is worth about $20,000 to $25,000, depending on the car. That's a horrible investment. It's going downhill. It's a depreciating item, but you're paying full cost for it. Scott?
Plus, if you're paying cash, you have leverage then in the negotiations.
Not usually anymore. Back in the good old days, you could do that. They don't negotiate with you much anymore. They got a set price, and it's what it is. I haven't seen that at all in recent times. Used to be, yeah. Anymore, they don't care. Matter of fact, it's good for them because they put it on the Ford credit thing, and they make money off of you. So they really don't care a bit if you have the money in your hand. It is an old time thing. It used to work. course, that was back when cars were worth $3,000 too, so. Yeah, you can try it. It'll work if you're buying from an individual. You say, let's say Brent over here has a car he wants to sell you, and he wants to sell it for $5, and you say, I'll give you $4. He might break down and give it to you. Yeah, so it might work on that basis. But it'll go into a car dealership, probably not. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look here at this. So it's untouchable. So some of your money, you ought to be saving for different things. So retirement, for example, your IRAs and retirement programs, 403B or 401K for most of you at work, those kinds of things. Those are good programs. You ought to be involved in those, and you don't touch those till you need them. So if you're planning for retirement and you're saving in those programs for 20, 30, 40 years, you don't go raid them when you need them. So I've seen this happen more times than I want to count, of a person who they've never been able to save, and suddenly they see their balance, this little account coming to them that says they have $100,000 in their retirement account at work. They never had that kind of money in their whole life, and they can't resist, so they go out and they take that money and go out and buy a car or put a down payment on a house, and the next thing you know, they don't have any money in that account, and then they get to retirement age and they basically have nothing. So this is untouchable money until you reach your goal. Retirement money is untouchable until you reach retirement. A car money is untouchable until you get ready to buy the car. Kids' funds for college, same thing. So you have a goal and you don't go in there and you don't rate it. And the only way not to rate it is to have other funds set aside to pay for these other bills, which somebody already mentioned, an emergency fund, and I will talk about that probably next week. Okay, so that's the first principle. Any more thoughts on that?
Gary?
Yeah.
When they haven't done it for a while, but when the car companies have this no interest
Yeah.
for 60 months, that's a good deal for the person, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes it is.
No interest.
Sometimes it is, depending on what the value of that car is compared to a used car, a couple of 3 years old or something. I did find especially back in COVID era, and probably still, I haven't looked for a while, but I found that especially with pickup trucks and those kind of things that that a 3-year-old pickup truck wasn't much different than a brand new one. And if you could get no interest from Ford or whatever, it might be worth doing. It's something to consider. But it really depends on the car and the rates. But if you have to go out and finance a car at the bank for 12%, you're in trouble right off the bat.
What's your thoughts on leasing a car?
Leasing is a terrible idea unless you are going to be buying a new car on a regular basis. If you're one of those people, and I grew up around people like this, who buy a new car every 3 years, okay? If you're a 3-year and out person, leasing is identical. You can do that if that's what you want to do, a 3-year car. So if that's the kind of person you are, and some people are, then it'll wash. If you're actually a person doing what I'm suggesting, you keep a car at least 10 years, it's a bad plan. Does that make sense? Yeah, Ben?
Those zero interest things can also catch you though, because they're usually things, if you're late on a payment, sometimes they'll go back and hit you with interest from day one. And so there are a lot of things that if
Yeah.
you're not prepared to be disciplined in how you deal with it,
Yeah.
watch out.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and probably more on appliances and things like that than cars, because you bought a washer and refrigerator, the whole kitchen outfit for 36 months, same as cash, right? So you go out and you get that money, get the loan and buy the stuff, and you make the payment, and then you forget a payment, because that'd be easier to forget, and then they backtrack and accumulate it all and charge you at 25% interest for that. That's where people get caught. So you got to be very diligent and just be on the ball. Yeah.
Whenever we purchased anything where there was no interest for a certain,
Uh-huh.
we take what the total cost was and divide it up in those months. And that's what our payment is.
Yeah. As long as you remember the payment. That's the thing.
Don't forget that.
Yeah. Well, some people do. Or some people, I think in some of these things, I haven't done this in a long time, but I think in some of these you don't have to make a payment until the end.
Yeah.
And then you make the payment all at once. But what if you forgot about that or didn't do it properly? Then you get hit with 25% interest on top of whatever you purchased.
First.
And that'll kill you. And that's what people do, though. They don't watch it, aren't careful. Got to be diligent with these things. Yeah.
I've had on my credit cards, two different times where you're paying payments,
Uh-huh.
the phone, and some automatic payments.
Yeah.
Two different times on credit cards, they didn't make the payment.
The credit card didn't?
The bank didn't make the payment to the credit card company, and I got stuck with the interest on it.
Did you get it worked out? That would be the bank's fault.
So the bank I never contacted the bank
Oh.
or anything, but, they
Okay.
forgot to make the payment, I got stuck with the interest.
Oh, ooh.
It can be forgotten in different ways.
Yeah, I never heard of that one. That's not good. Okay, let's move on to the next principle. Make use of the magic of compounding or compound interest. So the magic might sound over the top, but it really isn't. I'm going to show you that right now. There's some have declared the magic of compounding the eighth wonder of the world. And when you start adding up the numbers here I'm going to give you, you'll see why that is true. This is what all the financial gurus believe in, all the Warren Buffetts of the world. They make their money on compounding and so forth. So, and all the banks do that. I'll show that to you. I used to think years ago that the only way to save any money, all that matters is how much I could save. But as I studied this more and got involved with it more, I began to realize that the compounding of the money is probably more valuable, more important than actually what I can save. Because the compounding, you're making money on your money. You're making interest on your interest. And you do that for a long period of time. It's phenomenal how much that can add up. And most people don't realize just how important that is. So you're making, and so if you ever heard these gurus, money gurus, you should be making money while you're asleep. Your money should be making money for you while you're asleep. That's what this is, compounding. Your stuff is growing while you're taking a nap, all right? So you're not out there working yourself to death, it's working for you. Well, let's talk about how that works. There's three elements to this. Number one is the amount saved. So you can't compound anything if you don't have anything in there. So you need to have some money saved up, put money in there systematically on a regular basis. We'll look at that in a minute. And then there's time. And by the way, I'm just going to quote to you, I won't look it up, but in Proverbs 13:11, the New International quote translated this way, and I like it. It says, "He who saves little by little makes it grow." That's a wonderful principle. Because far too many people think I just got to have a lot of money, got to put a bunch of money in there all at once, I got to get it in a big hurry. He who saves little by little makes it grow. So over time, it'll grow, but you got to little by little put it in. Jeff?
I was thinking about the guy with the one talent who buried it. He said, you could have took it to the bank and it would have made me money.
Yeah, at least got something out of it, right? That's right. So if you can't save, so let's say you want to save $50 a month, and you just can't do it right now. Well, do 5. Start with $5 and add more as you get it. And on top of that, when I'm thinking about it, as you get more financial resources, let's say you get a raise at work, rather than raising your lifestyle, you take that extra money that you get from the raise and you save that and invest that instead. So you're not raising your lifestyle, you're raising your savings that way. So, and you get a windfall somewhere. You know, a lot of people, and this is, by the way, very bad financial planning, but a lot of people get a refund at the end of the year from their taxes, and they count on that money to do things with it. By the way, you have just given the government a loan for a whole year of your money. Let's say people get checks back for $5,000. You just given the government a $5,000 free interest loan for a year. Don't do that. It's a bad plan. I know a lot of people depend on that.
They won't do that for you.
Huh?
They won't do that for you.
No, yeah. Yeah, one time, it was very interesting. I said this before, but I had IRS sent me a $10,000 check one day. And I knew I didn't have a $10,000 check coming. So I went to the bank and asked them. They said, you better not cash that.
No.
But they're going to want that back. So I didn't. But the next day I got a letter back from the IRS. Send that money back. You know, I could have said, well, I will, but you got to pay me interest. But they wouldn't have liked that very much. Yeah. So anyway, so start with what you can and build as you can. You might get a windfall, though, like that. You might get some money for Christmas or gifts from different people, a bonus at work, different things. Don't live on that. Take it and put it somewhere. Save it. That's the issue. You plan to do that. And time is an extremely important factor in your financial program. Let me show you how this works. The earlier you start, the better. So here is a IRA account. This is just a thought, an illustration, at 9%. Now you say, where can I get 9%? Well, the stock market historically over many, many years has made about 9%, 8 or 9%. So that is not undoable. It is doable if you are willing to be patient over time. So nothing has really beat the stock market in most places over time. So you put money away in an IRA, in mutual funds, good, and we'll talk about investments in a few weeks, then you could probably count on or come close to 9%. So let's say you started at age 22. This is why I wish all the teenagers were in here. Started at age 22 and put down $2,000 for 9 years in an IRA. Okay? And you did that and you stopped. You never put another dime away the rest of your life. Then you have put in $18,000 in your IRA. Okay, at age 65, when you are starting to take your money out, maybe, at 67 now is when most people are supposed to start taking it out. You can do it at 62. But anyway, at 65, it's worth, look at that, $579,000. That's the magic of compounding. You put away $18,000 when you were young over a period of 9 years, and it's worth over $500,000 when you retire. How many people have $500,000 hanging around? You know, and they didn't even try hard. Just 8 or 9 years of planning ahead. But what if you said, nah, I'm too young. I don't need to plan ahead. I'm going to wait till I'm the ripe old age of 31. And I'm going to start putting money away at 31, $2,000 a year until I retire. You would then have put $70,000 away over 35 years, and it's worth $470,000. The sooner you start, the better. You're getting the numbers? The time makes the difference. And your money gets compounded over time. And so the sooner you start, the better. And don't wait until you say, well, I'm old and now I can do something. Start soon. Teach your children. Like I said, I wish the kids were in there. Start your children learning to put money away. A lot of them are working at Kurt's Farm or different things or making money. What are they doing with that money? Well, most of them aren't doing anything with that money. They're buying electronic equipment or iPads or whatever else. What if they make $5,000 a year when they're 16 years old? Instead of buying junk, they put at least $2,000 a year in an IRA. This is what they'd have, and a lot of kids can do that at 16, 17 years old. They're making money doing something, and that's not a hard thing if they were taught to do it. Most of them have no concept of that. And ones that do have money, that have made money at different jobs, often simply put it in the bank and let it sit there making no money for them. And that just sits there. Well, at the end of time, at the end of those years, you would have only the money you'd put away, which, let's say you put away $18,000 by the time you're 30, but you never got any interest on it. Guess how much money you have at age 65? $18,000. At 9%, you have $500,000 plus. So that's the time factor that is so valuable, so important. So those that have children, teach your children to save early in life and put it away. You don't want them to live in a lifestyle that is exorbitant, and they don't have to be in poverty. They can still have a decent life. $2,000 a year, bam. Kind of amazing. Scott?
I think a big principle is lead by example.
Yeah.
See that the parents put it away. Also with giving the church, have them set that
That's right.
priority.
That's right.
A
So
lot of times we, as parents, and I'm guilty, we don't lead by example like we should.
right. So if we're not doing it, we're going to hardly teach our kids, right? Which is why in this course we're doing that. I mean, even though your kids aren't in here, you can train them to do these things. You can teach them yourself, at least some of the major principles. And speaking of that, we go to the next thing, how to save. We pay yourself first, because you got to put money away. Number two, make use of the compounding. The amount saved time next is the rate of return. All right, so the rate of return matters a great deal. And here's why. I'm going to give you a rule. Now, everybody in the world ought to know the rule of 72. So this is a great trivia question. You ought to know the rule of 72. So I taught my little 8-year-old granddaughter the rule of 72. I taught all of them at the same time. I think Maya figured it out better than the others, actually. So the rule of 72 is this. It's very simple. You divide 72 by your interest rate, and that'll tell you how many years it's going to take to double. Okay? About as simple as it gets, right? So let's take some numbers. Let's plug some numbers in here. If you were receiving 1% interest, so you decided to stick it in the bank at a 1% rate, how long is it going to take it to double? 72 years. That's a long time, and now you're too old to use it. Okay, how about if 5%? Okay, it actually is 12 years, I think. Did I do my math wrong?
12 would be on 6%.
Okay. Okay, so you got it. You got 12 at 6%. Okay, at 15%, it doubles every 4 years and 10 months. 15% is hard to get, but we just throw that in for example. And so that's so that tells you want to be able to at least get enough money, interest rate, return on your investment to the degree that you possibly can if you want the money to compound. Now, if I just mentioned a while ago, 9% is doable in the stock market over time. So 9 into 72 is what? 8. So every 8 years, your money will double. And so let's talk about that for a moment. You have $10,000, all right? And you got it in a good mutual fund returning 9%. And okay, so you're 20 years old. And in 10 years, is that right? Did I add that right? What did I say it doubles? At 9% is 8. Okay, so you're 28 years old. I'm going to fuzzy up here. 28 years old, and how much is your 10,000 worth? 20. Okay, you got 8 more years. Now you're 36, and you got how much? 40. Not just another 20 or 10. You got it doubled, 40. Now you're 44. How much is it worth? 80. Now you're 52. How much is it worth? 160. Okay. Now you're 60. Worth 320. Just by sitting there, just in a good mutual fund, just growing at 9%, and that's compounding. That's the magic of compounding. You don't have to work yourself to death. You just have to be wise and look for good investments. Scott?
Sometimes, like through COVID and that, you see you're going down sharply. Don't go in there. You told me
Yeah.
do the long term. Don't be reactive to.
Okay,
the market.
and that's a real good point. That's why I said don't touch it. If you've got a good investment, you don't go in there and have shock. What most people do that put money in mutual funds and save is they freak out at some point and rob their money, and then when it comes back, they're not in the right place. So I knew a guy who during those times, one of those times, took everything he had out. He'd already lost 40%. I think that was during the Great Recession. He lost 40% of his money, and then he took it out, and then he never put it back. Okay, well, the money came back in spades over time, but he didn't get any advantage of it. So don't panic if you've got a good investment. Ben?
Isn't that the time to buy when it's down?
If you've got the guts to do it, that is the time to buy if you got the money. So what does Warren Buffett say? Bulls and bears they all die, but what is it? Oh, there's a good thing. How's that go? Anybody know? Pigs always get. Bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered or something like that. So don't be a pig. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I gotta get there. I gotta get that back in context. Okay, so you understand this? If you can just get this rule of 72 in your head and live it out, man, that's a lot of difference. But it takes time, and it takes a good investment. Dan?
I've actually had people of influence in my life say to me that it's usury to have money invested in mutual funds and stuff, and they're kind of justifying their life and their decision. But how do you balance that? Because it's the living for the money, living for the
Yeah.
return. How do you find that balance?
Well, you find the balance by following the biblical principles of money. Our money is used for the glory of God. the money that we accumulate is not simply to live a wonderful lifestyle, it's to use it for his glory. We can be comfortable and live a decent lifestyle, but we're looking for the benefits for his purposes. So we don't want to become hoarders and greedy, but the scriptures are pretty clear about the importance of saving and investing and not simply living moment by moment. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't save for yourself and use the principle, and you end up broke down the road, somebody else is paying.
Somebody's going to pay for you.
Not you. It's irresponsible.
Yeah, the government's going to pay for you, your family's going to pay for you, somebody's going to take care of you. So you ought to be looking to take care of yourself. That's only good stewardship. Yeah, we can. Okay, let's go on. What else can you do here? The Rule 72, let's look at it this way. 10,000 invested in 24 years. I just gave those numbers a minute ago. 20,000. Yes, if you have earned 3% in 20 years, it's worth 24 years is worth 20,000. 6%, 40,000. 12%, 160,000. So the amount of interest or return on your investments you can get is important. And we'll talk about risk factors and all that later on, but I'm just showing you the principles here. Okay, let's move on. How to save. What's another way to save? Well, adjust your lifestyle is next. Most people are funding their annual negative cash flow with increased credit card and consumer debt because they're not able to pay their bill or buy what they want on their income. They're charging it. Credit cards is one of the worst places you can charge. Consumer debt's a little better. You can go to the bank and get a 12% loan. That's better than a 25% through the credit cards. But either way, you're in debt. And we do that because it's so easy to do so. So let me give you an example here of a car and pay. See, banks and smart people know the value of compounding. So why is it that a bank is so eager to loan you money? So let me show you. This is very simple, way too simple. Let's say you pay $1,000 a year for car payments, which would be very, very low. Right? I don't know what kind of car you're going to get for $1,000, but there you have it. But you did it for 40 years. For 40 years, you plucked down $1,000 in car payments through the bank. You went to the bank and got that. Your bank, on the other hand, took your $40,000 over time, and they loaned it out at 12.5% to other people who are buying cars. Over 40 years, the bank will have accumulated $1 million. Are you following the math? You have spent $40,000. They have made $1 million on your money. That's the magic of compounding. Instead of being a borrower, you be the bank. You let other people come to you so that your money grows rather than you losing money in this. The banks know what they're doing. That's why they're so wealthy. That's why they make billions and trillions of dollars. Because they know people will borrow from them at these kinds of things, and they can lend it out at a much higher rate, and they can make a lot of money. So instead of the borrower, you be the loaner in a sense. You be the person investing. So the bank has made $960,000 on your $40,000. That's an average of $25,000 a year in interest. That's a $240,000 annual return. Okay, we think of 5% being pretty cool. But when you compound it, they just made $240,000 on you, a percent on you. That's the average return. So these are ridiculously crazy numbers that some of you may not compute for some of you. But the point is, compounding is an unbelievable thing if you get in on it. You want to be on the right side of compounding. Okay. So before we look at this chart, I'm going to hand out. I'm going to hand out a chart here or two. I want you to take on. So Luke, if you could pass it on that side, and let me keep one here. And Connor on that side. Okay, does everybody pretty much have one? Okay, let me make a couple more comments before we press on with this. Couple simple principles. Number one, you can't have everything. A lot of people think they can, and that's why they're in such financial trouble. You can't have everything, and so we're talking about, here's the next principle, delayed gratification. Since you can't have everything now, you got goals in front of you, things you want to accomplish in the future. That's delayed gratification. You can't spend it all now if you want to be able to do well later. That's very important. Now, when you say that, you're going to get absolutely no support from the world. The world is going to try everything in its power to get their money. They're constantly, I mean, all the ads on TV or whatever, you know, it's just so great if you can just travel the world. Look, I can travel all over the world. I just throw my credit card on the table. That's the kind of thing they got. Or the thing, you know, the credit cards that give you rewards, give money back. Oh, wow, let me pay for that. I get 2% back. You just bought somebody's supper for $100 and you get 2% back. That's not a good return on your investment. Get that other guy to buy your lunch and give him and pay for the tip or something, you know? Or I don't know, but so the stupidity of that kind of reasoning that you got 2% back and therefore you can just charge all you want, just is so ridiculous. But this is how the financial world works, and you're not going to get a lot of help probably even from a lot of Christians, because a lot of Christians don't understand these principles either. But how are you going to be able to save if right now you're struggling to save? So the question is, what can you do? And so we start with this. Look at this here that you got. So let's kind of go back to what Dan said a while ago. What is your total income? Now, you could do this right now, or this holiday season where you're sitting around eating too much pumpkin pie and getting fatter by the minute and watching football games so your eyes are rolling in the back of your head. You could pull out.
It sounds like a great day so far.
That's my day. That's my Thanksgiving right there. I mean, that's what a lot of people think, actually. So that I don't know, but so you can pull out your financial stuff. Go get your. And if you haven't done this before, we talked about doing your accumulation of your network and all that. So go back and look. What are you bringing? What's your money? How much income do you have? Total income. So let's say it's $50,000. All right. Okay. Minus your giving. How much are you giving to the Lord's work? So you should have already worked that out in your heart and mind if you're married with your spouse. So in my opinion, and I just throw it out there, if you're not giving 10%, something's wrong with you. How does that sound? Okay, so let's say you follow my dictatorial ruling here, and you take away $5,000, you got $45,000 left. You got taxes. How much is your taxes? So let's say your taxes are $10,000. Making these numbers up as I go. That leaves you $35,000. And let's say you already got debt payments. You got car payments, student loan payments, whatever else. How much a month is that? And when you have to pay your bills, right? So you put all that down there, and what do you have left over? Well, let's say $25,000. That's your lifestyle money. You're living your lifestyle based on not what you bring home, but what's left over after you pay these things that you're already obligated to pay. So you got a lifestyle of $25,000. Now that's pretty low, so you'd have to go back. Hopefully most of you could do a little better than that, but that's just some ideas. So if you think about that, then look at this little chart. Now this is much fuller up here on my overhead, but you can add to this. Go back and look at and do a plan. By now, if you've done the homework I've given you, which I don't know how many you've done that, but if you've done the homework I've given you, you ought to have a good handle right now on how much you're paying on all those categories. You ought to know how much housing's not hard if you're paying a mortgage and you got everything wrapped into that. Food, that's different. Okay? So how much you paying for food? So if you say, well, we're paying $100 a month for our food, you're probably lying or starving, one or the other. Okay? So don't forget when you do that to count all the times you go out for that latte and eat lunch out, and you'll probably find you're spending more money going out than you are for groceries. You know, we go to the grocery store and we look for a hot deal, get my potato chips 50 cents off, and then you go across the street and spend $20 a head for lunch. That really isn't real smart. It doesn't mean we don't do it sometimes, but it isn't real smart. We could spend a ton of money. If you've eaten out anytime recently, most of you have, you know how much it's gone up since COVID. It's just astronomical compared to what it was. Just amazing. But you got to add all that up. What are you actually spending on food, eating out, coffees, blah, blah, blah. Clothing, don't just guess. Go back and do the numbers that we gave you earlier and see how much are you actually spending, how much you're spending on entertainment. On that includes vacation. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have a real problem. There's people who absolutely believe it's in the Bible somewhere that everybody must take a vacation and we must go to expensive places. So I don't know how many people I know that cannot pay their bills without going in debt, who insist on going to Disneyland or Disney World, or insist on spending $4,000 or $5,000 for a vacation. There's nothing in the Bible that says you have to take a vacation. Believe it or not, there were people in my age bracket growing up who never took a vacation, and they lived. It's amazing. My parents, we never went on a real vacation except once in my whole life, and that wasn't much. And we went, where do we go? Relatives. And we lived off the relatives for 2 weeks. Now, I'm not saying that's their finest hour or anything, but that's what most people did, and they survived. You don't have to spend $5,000 a year or 20, whatever you want to do, on vacation, unless you've got the money to do it. That's one thing, but you don't have to. So if you're not meeting your other obligations, you don't have to do that. You can take that money and put it towards debt reduction and savings and things we're talking about here, much, much better than going out and doing those kind of things. You got your medical issues. You got to figure out what that is. Everybody's different there. Insurance, children. So children, as they get older, they get more expensive for the most part. And so you think they're expensive when they're 3. Wait till they get to being 19 and 20, and going to college or whatever else. Or when they reach, and they all have to have a car, and they all have to have a cell phone, and all that kind of good stuff that we can get into some other day. But that's expensive, right? So that really adds up. Yeah.
I just want to say something about entertainment. Something that my family did and still does is we pick what entertainment we want. And I think sometimes you have a mindset that, well, I need a little bit of all the entertainment. So I need to go to the movies, and I need to eat out, and I need to go on trips, and I need to do all these things. And one thing we did is that we didn't do a lot of these regular things, and we would save that money to go on a trip.
Okay.
And just working on that mindset that I don't need all the kinds of entertainment.
Okay.
I can say no to something so that I can do other things.
Okay, so that's really good. That goes back to we can't have everything. So if I have a desire to do something, I plan ahead for that. That means I have to cut somewhere else, which might be in this case some of the entertainment. It's very good. That's the kind of thing we have to do. Marvin?
Well, one of my sons asked me one time, how come it's old guys that drive the Corvettes and stuff? I said, because their kids are grown up and gone and they got money now.
Now, you see these big pickup trucks, and they get out of them. They're $90,000 pickup trucks. And who steps out of those pickup trucks? Some old guy on a walker. I saw one today doing the same. Yeah, Jim?
I think one thing that fuels this passion for spending is how connected we are on social media.
Yes.
And we'll see a neighbor or a friend who's doing X, Y, or Z, and it just fuels a mindset. And whether you can afford it or not, you think that's what you should be doing.
Yes.
And I think it's a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are people that spend, just like you said, that they don't have the money to spend it, but they think they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Because that's what their culture around there is.
That's right. And they feel sorry for themselves if they can't. Why me? Well, poor me, type of thing. So then they get caught up in that. Then they're in worse shape.
Get off Facebook.
Get off Facebook. At least all the ads, right?
I think they used to call that keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, that's what they used to say. And we found out the Joneses were in prison, so we stopped that. Okay, so let's kind of work through this a little bit. Okay, not quite. Okay, so here's what this is about. Go through all these things. What are you actually spending? Is there anywhere on this chart, and you can add to it, that you can cut something so that you can save? Yeah, it could be your entertainment, could be your children, they don't care. Cut the children, yeah. It's like, I actually know, I remember years ago, a guy who took a second job so he could buy Christmas presents for his family. And when he bought so much Christmas presents, he couldn't quit his other job. He had to keep working to pay the Christmas present. Let me tell you what, if your family doesn't love you enough that you have to buy them $5,000 Christmas presents, forget them. Get another family or something. I mean, that's nuts. Get them a sugar daddy or something, and some White Castle certificate or something. Yeah, there is a. Yeah, let me make sure you understand the sugar daddy comment. Okay, I meant the sucker. That you buy at Cracker Barrel, not what you might think. Some of you others. Sorry, I mean so those on the internet today. That's what I meant. All right. Yeah, that's a pretty good correction right there. Okay, so so you're doing that. Then on the right-hand column, actions taken. What would you have to do to cut down on something? You don't have to live in poverty necessarily, but there's some things you could do to change things a little bit for you. So plan this. Let's say after going through this, you come up with a $50 that you can loosen up to save. That's $50, and that's a good plan. It's a good start. So look at that in your thing. That's what that chart's about. Now let me also add another thing here. Realign your assets. Okay, by that, okay, that means you've got stuff. Yeah, Tania?
I want to say that it's important to remember that the Lord provides everything that we need.
Yes, that's a really good point. All that we need for life and godliness comes through Christ. So if we're trying to get our happiness and our satisfaction through stuff, that's a big problem. That's a really good point. Okay, so
going along with that, Gary, is in the Lord, we're to be good stewards of that money that He has given us.
that's right.
So keep that in mind
Yep.
as we're spending it.
That's right. Are we using it as He would want us to use it? It's not our money as Christians. It's His money. So are we using it as He would have us use it? Okay, here's what I mean by that. You've got stuff that you could realign. So let's start looking at some things. Here are some things that you could do. It's kind of along the line of that chart you got. That might be a difference. Let's say you have $5,000 in the bank. You got a savings account with $5,000. It's accumulating virtually no interest, maybe 1%. Let's say it's got 1%, and so you make $50 a year on that savings account, a checking account. I know a lot of people. Over the time, usually older people that have $50,000 to $100,000 sitting in a checking account, making nothing. That's not a good idea. So let's say you have 5 and you're making $50 a year. So after planning, you decide to buy treasury notes, treasury bills. We'll talk about that later. At 3%. Now they're doing a little better than that right now, probably close to 4, 4.5, something like that. But if it's at 3%, you can get $150 a year. But simply by moving to treasury bills, treasury notes, rather than keep it in the bank. Now you need money in the bank for an emergency fund. I'll talk about that later. You need some money there. That's not a good investment. Let's look at another one. You don't have an IRA, so you're not making any money on that, but you decide to do an IRA. IRA will save you taxes at 15%. If you're in the 15% bracket, you'll save $300 a year on taxes. So you made money there. So you take some of that money out of your savings account, put it there. How about refinancing your house? If you have a $100,000 mortgage at 6%, which is pretty common right now, if you get a 4% mortgage rate, you could save $2,000 a year. Now you say, well, I can't do that right now. No, but maybe in a year you could. Who knows? When you watch these interest rates go down, be ready to jump on them. Remember when it was about 2% not long ago? I almost wanted to go out and just borrow money for fun. At 2%, good night. To watch for opportunities. Look, they're not always there, but when they're there, jump on it. That would be saving $2,000 a year if you could reduce that interest rate on your house. Life insurance, well, whole life insurance is very expensive. Most people don't need whole life. What most people need is term insurance, and that'll save you $150 a month on this particular illustration by buying term insurance. And you could probably get a lot more insurance by doing term, but that's another the other day. Look at your liabilities. How about your credit cards? If you have $2,000 at 15%, you're paying a rate of 15%, you're paying $300 a year. And the credit card, what if you moved to a credit card that only charged 6%, or got a loan for the bank at 6% to reduce, you're gonna save $180. Or, and keep in mind, you gotta work at this a little bit, but a lot of credit cards have teaser rates. How many of you used those before? Hardly anybody? Teaser rate is they'll give you no interest credit card for a period of 6 months to a year or 2 years. And so you take your balance. Let's say you have $5,000 in a credit card. You shift that over to Discovery or whoever's giving you the rates, and they don't charge you any interest for a year. I know a couple people that actually paid the mortgage on their house with teaser rates. They kept on moving from place to place to place to place. Eventually, the FBI catches up with you, I think, don't they, and put you in jail. But that's legal. So why pay 25% on credit cards when you can pay 0? But you got to do a little work. You got to go online and find out who has the teaser rates and who will do this for you. Okay, it takes a little work, but these are things you could do. Car payment, you got a $10,000 loan at 10% from the bank. You're paying $1,000 a year. If you have no car payment, like I talked about a while ago, we'll talk about that later, then you save $1,000 a year. So pay cash for a car you can't afford. There's nothing wrong with buying a 5-year-old car when you don't have the money to buy a new car. Buy a car you can afford. That's really anathema in America, but it's wise financial stewardship. Scott?
What is it's like, there's certain depreciation once you drive it off the lot, a new one, right?
Yeah. Well,
So you take a hit, let somebody else take a hit.
and then buy it later, yes. Yeah, because it's a depreciating item. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
When you're looking for someone to give financial advice, we talk a lot about counseling, needing to go to biblical counselors. How do you find somebody that has these kind of biblical principles in mind? Because there are financial planners out there that are not thinking about being conservative in any way. They're wanting you to make huge investments and stuff. How do you find somebody?
Well, you tell Jim Rowley I want to come to your place.
I'm glad you asked.
No, look for somebody, a Christian person who has your values, and go with that. The big word today is fiduciary, right? Everybody fiduciary. Well, that means they're supposed to be taking care of you, not themselves. But I'm not sure they all do that just because they say it. So look for a person who really wants to take care of you and has your values. Yeah. Okay. What's I got here? The last thing we'll talk about today, we're about done, is avoid debt. Pay off your credit cards at the end of every month. So that's one of the most simple principles. Never carry a credit card balance, ever. The amount that you're going to lose, you'll never catch up, especially if you're paying the minimum amount. If you're in debt with credit cards right now, make it your priority to get rid of those as soon as possible and move on with no debt. And then for the rest of the time, you pay it off at the end of the month. So there's nothing really wrong with using a credit card if you pay it off. Although Ramsey and these guys will tell you you'll spend more if you use a credit card rather than cash or check, but because it's easier. It's so simple to pluck down that card that people are more likely to do it. But so he doesn't recommend any credit cards at all. But nevertheless, if you have any interest, get rid of it and determine never to carry credit card interest forward ever after that. For all major purposes, purchases, finance as little as possible. A few things that often have to be financed is a business expense if you're starting a business, a car when you're younger and haven't been able to accumulate money towards cars, a mortgage. There's not a lot of people that can go out and buy the house with cash, so you're going to have that mortgage. But a mortgage, at least, is an appreciated item. Okay, so even up until recently, houses were not going up in Springfield much, hardly at all. Since COVID, it's gone up quite a bit. It's kind of a phenomenon around here. But you're usually not going to lose money on decent real estate, so it's not going down. So at least you got that. And over time, even if it doesn't go up much, you're paying it off. But most other things, credit for depreciating items should be avoided at all costs. Don't buy appliances on credit. If your dryer goes out, learn the fine art of hanging it up on a line. You know, people have also done that in the past and lived, believe it or not. Well, some subdivisions have codes against it. You're not allowed to hang your stuff out. So bring it over to church and hang it on the lines over here, wherever you have to. But find, you know. I know. Oh, and don't put your junk in our dumpster. We've got some sinners in our church been doing that, and we got cameras now. We're going to catch you. All right? So don't do that. Anyway.
You know there's a padlock on it.
That's why we have the padlock. Okay, so debt is a bad thing. Stay away from debt. And that's where most people are. Bob?
Yeah, Gary, when I was building houses, our houses, when we sold them, we had, some of them even washer, dryer,
Yeah.
refrigerator, stove, and dishwasher.
Mhm.
Well, I had one customer that, he said, I don't want any appliances. And that's exactly what he said, because I'm gonna be paying my mortgage,
But,
and I don't want this to be it.
yeah, but you almost have to have a refrigerator and a few things.
He just didn't want us.
You just want to finance it.
to be in the mortgage.
And one last comment, if your dishwasher goes out, you don't have to go on credit, buy a dishwasher. You could wash them by hand. I know that's hard, maybe even harsh, but you could do that. Just something to think about. Okay.
There is some deals that if you pay cash, they'll give you 10% off, so,
Some places are doing that. Some restaurants are doing that.
yes, some are doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're going to look at spending next week. That's much happier, it's a thought, but it kind of goes with this, okay? Okay.